Ladies and gentlemen, your hosts, Michael Wilkes, Angel Ortiz, Dr. Chad, and Sam La Cavera. Go check out beardedbrowns.com and be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, everybody? What is up? Welcome to the Bearded Browns podcast show. Well, some big news in Berea hit today. I don't know if people have been sleeping under a rock or not, or you've been too busy at work like Mike has been. That's why Mike is not here. He is working hard. He is making sure everyone gets home safe. So pray for those tow truck drivers that are out there risking their lives on the side of roads for crazy drivers.
The real heroes.
Yeah, the real heroes. So shout out to Mike being out there taking care of everybody. He'll be back soon enough, hopefully sooner than later. But me and Chad are here, and we're going to talk about this new hire, Todd Monken. We're waiting on our guest now, but while we're waiting, we're just going to get into it. Todd Monken was announced at his press conference today. Andrew Berry introduced him. It was pretty interesting. Some stuff that we'll probably talk about what Andrew Berry said for that 5 minutes beforehand of what they later, maybe next week or later on in a couple of shows from now, because he laid out how they established Todd Monken to be the guy. And there's a lot of things in their verbiages that I kind of like. I'm an overthinker like it is. So when I hear it, I write it down and I process it. And I'm like, wow, he means this or that or this. And it's very interesting how they came about Todd Monken. But Todd Monken's press conference was a fun one. You got to listen to it in entirety, Chad. I know you say you were listening to it on your way home.
Yeah, I was worried I wasn't going to catch it, but I was able to hear it, fortunately.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about when he got hired, Chad. What was your initial feeling about it?
So I think we've talked about this along the way, so there's no like getting around it. It's not to me an exciting hire. It's not a hire that like moves the needle as far as excitement. But to be fair, I think a lot of what excites people, or at least this cycle and some others, is like the unknown. And he's like a little bit of a known, like he's been around for a long time. He hasn't been a head coach in the past, which doesn't mean he's not going to be good. It just gives you pause. He falls in that area of like, I know you've interviewed several times. I know you've come close to getting it. I know other people get it. Like, what is it that teams are seeing that has kept you from having this position earlier? It's not like he's not really well accomplished, but I think for most of the Browns fan base, there was an excitement to the idea of a new unknown guy, the next big thing. I know you shared that you were really excited about the young candidates. For me, it was almost like just that reality check of this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. The only difference was I thought it would be Schwartz, because I really thought it was going to come down to whoever gets hired here is going to be somebody who doesn't see a better option this year or in the near future, and somebody who's like just really wants a head coaching job and just is willing to take it because it just hasn't been offered somewhere else. I just thought deep down the whole time, if we're right and it lands on that guy, it'll be Schwartz, because I couldn't believe they would have him along for this whole process. This is something we'll get into a little later in the show, and then end up not giving it to him. I just did not believe that would happen. Yeah. So I really kept thinking of Todd Monken as like, the only way I can see Todd Monken getting this job is if like Schwartz takes something else or goes a different direction, because I really thought this is the exact type of guy they'll hire, but they have one already in the building who I think they'll take the position. and they didn't. So I think my biggest surprise was like, I can't believe if they went with like an older guy, they would go with Monken over Schwartz. So
Yeah, that
I
yeah, I was the same. I was in, and we talked about it when it happened. I was in initial shock, and then after I got home from work, I started like, well, I feel stupid because as a podcast, like I and I think we didn't take him seriously, right? So for me, it's like I wasn't looking hard at him like I was looking at
yeah.
Shieldhouse or Grant.
Oh, see, opposite.
No,
I expected him over those guys. I think we talked about that, and I
yeah,
think it's because I was there. It's not like partially I expected it because I thought whoever's going to take this job, it's like their only option. Those young guys, I kind of thought they have the ability to be like, if I don't love Cleveland as an option, I'll just wait.
yeah. Just go back to the original
He's
job.
like, this Cleveland job's not exactly what I want. He doesn't know if he'll ever get one then. So an older guy seemed more likely to take it. I guess where I got thrown a little off is like what I said is I didn't dive into those other guys, but I was nervous about those guys because I was
Yep,
nervous about not their age, not 30, 35. I was nervous more about the fact that they've been in the NFL for such a short time. Can they hire a staff? So I'm I don't hate this hire. It just threw me off because I just expected they would, if it came to the two,
it'll
they
be
would
Jim.
choose Schwartz almost out of like a respect for what he's done here and knowing how many people like him. And they didn't. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's better that they were like, "You've been in this building whole time. We like you as a DC." But I think it's a little bit heartless. It honestly feels a little bit heartless. But I also think they were choosing Monken over Schwartz. Like, it's very
Yeah,
clear, like, they didn't just Schwartz to me was, "You're the only guy that'll take the job. You're our last resort." It
yep,
felt like that to me the whole time, and we were very vocal about that. Like, if no one else will take it, it'll go to Schwartz. I guess the big plus of this over Schwartz is they obviously had the option, and
yeah.
they picked they didn't just take the last resort. They had 2, and
This
they
they
made
took
the
the offensive guy. They took the
which
offensive guy.
you're right, that's what we should feel stupid about. We should
Yeah,
have known they would rather go offense, and honestly, in my head, they would rather go offense, and I'll bet you they thought the whole time, Jim will just stay as the DC. He's
yeah,
under contract,
yeah,
he's on board, they'll just keep him, and somehow they had that impression, and Jim was not giving that vibe the whole time. So,
yeah.
I think
So
that's
they
a really long way to say, like, surprised, but shouldn't be surprised. This is exactly
yeah.
how it should have turned out.
Yeah, so now my initial thought after like looking up and doing like and it's funny, like all these videos surfacing of Todd Monken talking, right? So if I would have saw that, I'd have been like, he's older, but he's a lot wiser than these young cats, and he's got this 6 point PowerPoint message of how to run a great offense. That would have enticed me to even like him, even give him a shot or even like him more than the
You
others.
know this will sound stupid, but one of the things I really liked about him, and I think I did talk about this, like, several weeks ago, that when they first announced they were hiring him, I was like, "It kind of surprises me," because similarly to Mike McDaniel, those are 2 guys now Mike McDaniel's situation was a little more dramatic, but both of them were people who criticized the organization when they left.
Yeah.
The difference was, I think Todd kind of included himself in the criticism of like, we ran a bad offense, we were unorganized, we didn't do what we set out to do. Mike's was more like with Shanahan saying, like, here's all the reasons that the Browns suck and are stupid. So
Yeah.
it was a very different vibe. That's why I was surprised that Mike even McDaniel even interviewed here and what that they even brought him in.
Yeah.
I was
Mike, that
pleasantly
was a
surprised because I thought he'd be fun to cover, but I was surprised that he was in the mix, and I'm not shocked that he bowed out. But but in similar ways, when Munkin left, he had a lot to say that was critical about how they did things here.
yeah.
But I do have an appreciation of the fact that they what looked past that and still brought him in, not just like holding that against him. Like, oh, you're kind of negative on the franchise when you left. It is more like a reality check. Like, yeah, it was pretty negative. It was bad.
Yeah,
So
in this press conference, Munkin said he learned a lot since 2019, and
true.
we're gonna bring
He
in the
also wasn't in charge then. I mean, it's
yeah,
just different. He
yeah,
didn't fail in 2019 as the head coach. They failed as an offense because he was the OC. And I honestly just think Freddie was so bad. The stories came out immediately when that ended. He was part of it. But stories came out other times from players like, we practiced something all week, and then in the game, they called totally different stuff than what we had game planned for all week, and it threw everyone off. Or he would call Freddie Kitchens famously called plays that they had not practiced yet, and everyone was confused. And so I'm not worried about Todd in that way. I'm almost excited that they looked past the negatives from 19 and are like, we don't care. We're going to do it differently.
You know, we can sit here and assume about Todd Monken all we want, but we just got somebody in that knows a lot more about Todd Monken than us. Ladies and gentlemen, today our guest is a regular film analyst on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore, where he breaks down Ravens game tape. He's been doing it for years. His website is Film Study, Baltimore Ravens Talk. Please give it up for my new favorite film breakdown person, because I watch Browns film breakdown a lot, and I know you were just on there maybe a couple days ago.
Yep.
Give it up for Ken Music, ladies and gentlemen. Baltimore Ravens film breakdown. So he studied the last 4 years of Todd Monken, and he knows everything that we want to know. So Ken, the first question, I don't want to keep you too long today because I know you're a busy man. The first question I have for you today is, from the film standpoint, what is the most, from a film standpoint, what changed the most in Baltimore when the offense went from went from Greg Roman to Todd Monken?
So Greg Roman, very run focused, ran an extraordinarily heavy offense, probably the heaviest in NFL history. If you relate it to, appreciate you putting me in the center there.
Yeah,
that's
good.
Better. But by the way, love your guys' music. When are you coming out with the next Sharp Dressed Man?
Believe it or not, that the guy that he's our producer, he has a band, and that's their music.
Oh my God, that must be very confusing to folks. All right. Anyway, Todd Monken came in and took over for Greg Roman. Greg Roman ran pretty much the heaviest offense in NFL history. If you compare tight ends plus fullbacks plus OL sixes, those are the heavies you have on any play. You're sacrificing from among your 5 eligible receivers for those players, and the Ravens averaged 2.35 in 2022, Monken's last year. They're down to 1.85, which still makes them by far the heaviest in the NFL under Monken. So they kept a lot of their DNA elements with him. And I think that's something you would look for is try and keep the elements that are good in your offense and discard others. The Browns obviously are in a position where they could start, from scratch in a lot of ways, but they're going to try and maximize who Sanders is, I'm sure, with Monken.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to say the other thing is he very tight end offense at Georgia. He ran a lot of 12 personnel, and the Ravens are extraordinarily effective throwing to the tight end. His first 2 years as OC, 143.5 combined passer rating. The only group in NFL history which was close was Hernandez and Gronk around 2010 were in the same neighborhood, but 30 touchdowns and 1 interception throwing to the tight ends in those 2 seasons. Dropped to a 91.3 passer rating throwing to them this year was one of the big setbacks. I have some other things to talk about, but I'll give you guys a chance to ask your questions.
Do you think Sanders, I mean, it's probably something I should stick to script. What do you think Sanders would work well with Monken? Because that's going to be the main, when you leave, people are going to hit the chat. How would he do well with Sanders? Because Sanders obviously is a fan favorite here. He has like a huge fan base, a huge following. Wanted to hear your take on that.
He's a massive wild card. I think the thing that really makes sense for Monken, you're going to love when he gets to the podium and says this, that a balanced offense is one where the defense has to defend every blade of grass effectively. And I think that always is a good thing for any offense. The offense needs space. They need to really use it effectively. They need to make sure the X receiver space is used well. That's a high percentage of the space budget on any play. They need to make sure the strong side, if you play typical 3-by-1 football, is used exceptionally well too and can be schemed up for blocking and route combinations and whatnot. Monken gives you a chance to do both. Not as fullback heavy, obviously, as or maybe not obviously, but not as fullback heavy as Roman was, but he still used Ricard a good amount. So he'll work with the pieces you have. I think he'll be very good for Fannin. Isn't Njoku still under contract for this next year?
No, he's actually a free agent.
Okay.
So I anticipate
which
they're
leads
gonna
us
look for yeah, go ahead,
which leads
Chad.
us to our next question. Can Isaiah Likely block?
Yeah,
Or
he's
is he
really
essentially just Harold Fanning can block, but he just doesn't have like much girth, you know? He's a willing blocker, he's a
He'd
active
rather
blocker,
not,
but he's
yeah.
not a steamroller.
I don't think he wants to block anyways.
PFF grades don't really tell the whole story on Isaiah Likely, who I think has been a
Mhm.
pretty damn good run blocker. Really good sealer, not a problem coming in when flexed. Doesn't play in line very often with the Ravens. It's oftentimes either Ricard or Kohler who has that responsibility, or even Andrews. I'd say in that would be the order: Ricard, Kohler, Andrews, and then Likely in terms of the most likely to be an inline tight end.
Okay.
But so Isaiah Likely will be available. He may very well go in the division. He may go somewhere else. I don't see the Ravens re-signing him. They just won't have the money to do it.
Because
I
Lamar, they have to fix up with the Lamar contract, right? They have to deal with that, and
There's a whole bunch of stuff. The Ravens team has a lot of holes they have to fill.
Yeah.
A lot on the offensive line, on the defensive line, at corner. They really need to spend some draft capital at corner. So they've got a lot of things to fix. They can't afford to be paying 2 tight ends. And I don't really think, unless they get the Jackson contract done first to ensure that Jackson is going to be here for the next 5 or 6 years, that they will try and sign Linderbaum. I think that would be a mistake. Linderbaum, they'll have to stretch. They'll have to overpay him to a certain degree.
Yeah.
He's not a particularly great pass blocker. And in order to, if they have to pay him 18.5, 19 million, they would only do it to stretch for that kind of a contract if they were sure that Lamar was going to be there for the whole time. Otherwise, they'd be really going down a bad organizational direction, I think.
It's interesting. It's interesting you brought up Linderbaum, because the reason I brought up Likely, and it goes right along with Linderbaum, I think those are the two Ravens that Browns fans tended. So I love Isaiah Likely. I just think he's like a dynamic player. I know he needs to be on the field consistently. He's had some issues, but I just think he's a threat. And until we saw what we saw out of Fannin, I thought that would have been a really high target for me. Now I'm more in the mindset that both Linderbaum and Likely will more than likely be overpaid, and I don't know that the Browns are usually in the market to do that. So I'm ready to disappoint fans with the fact that neither will be here. We'll see. But I guess I'd just say a follow-up on both those. Do you think those two are going to be worth the price tag that they're very likely to bring in this year from what you've seen on film, or do you think they're going to be like a typical free agent overpay that somebody's going to give to get them in the building?
So free agency is a balancing game. You want to get as young as possible, and you have those dollars to spend on players who are not on their rookie deals. You have to do it as judiciously as you possibly can. I would say the Andrews contract did not represent the judicious spending. I would rather they spent the same money on Likely. He would have probably cost more, which is the reason why the Ravens, had trouble coming to an agreement with him. They reportedly offered him about $14 million AAV in camp. He was having a great camp. All kinds of catch radius was looking great, and he's just one of the really impressive players there. And they were not able to get that deal done. He kind of bet on himself, I think you'd say. Then he got hurt, and the contract didn't get done. And then he came back and didn't have a great season by any stretch. But I still think he's a good gamble. He's a young player, so he'll be a value to somebody. Andrews just had a 6.0 yards per target season, which is terrible, and so you can't really. I'm not really thrilled they made the bet there.
Do you attribute that to Lamar Jackson's injury, the low yardage? Yeah.
Some of it, because when Lamar Jackson is hurt, that means the other quarterbacks are throwing they're throwing inaccurately for starters, but they're also throwing a lot of more ball out quick routes to not only to Andrews, but also to Flowers, that really hurt his yards per target. Even though he finished over 10 for the year, the yards per target was really hurt from the games that the other quarterbacks, Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley, were in there.
All right. On the second question, how much of Baltimore's offense success under Monken was more of a system versus quarterback freedom?
So he was good at adapting to let Lamar be Lamar. So maybe that'll be something that's good for Sanders. Maybe Sanders is a guy who really needs more structure. I don't know. I don't think we know enough yet about who Sanders is. Maybe Browns fans think they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of the aunties and uncles know enough about Sanders. They'll tell you in the chat. Trust me.
So anyway, I think he's gonna do a good job of working with what he has. They did some interesting things, and one thing about Monken I wanted to point to is he really tried to be a stickler on cadence this last camp and try and get the Ravens able to operate on multiple cadences. So they would do set and snap drills every single day. What that meant is they go without helmets to the line of scrimmage. Actually, they go to the huddle, get the play in, get the line of scrimmage as quickly as possible on a time basis. Ravens score everything in practice, by the way, grade everything in practice. So they have a whole bunch of boards in the individual rooms that show that. I wouldn't be surprised if Monken tries to capture some of that in moving to Cleveland. Cleveland known for their analytics department, so it would be something that they certainly could adapt. But anyway, the set and snap drills, get the play in, get to the line of scrimmage, get the motion taken care of safely, and get off as quickly as you can. And they were using multiple cadences to try and both adapt to the defense, get to the line of scrimmage quickly, and make sure they didn't have false starts, because they had a lot of false start problems. In camp, it was atrocious. I mean, they were having false starts every day, whether it was in that drill, which is really bad, or in 11 on 11s. And so they had a lot of problems, but those growing pains really paid off during the regular season. They cut their false starts by 5. Now, when you think about that, if they go with more complex cadence, like more false starts probably would have been okay. But they had actually cut their false starts by 5 over the course of the season. That doesn't seem like much, but the other gains from it are that you're taking time to look at what the defense is doing to you on a pre-snap basis, and you can make more adjustments there. And you also can keep their pass rushers, their edge rushers in particular, out of the sprinters blocks, so to speak, in terms of getting off on one each time. So you have multiple advantages from being able to do it. I think Monken was very good at demanding that of his team, explaining it to the media, and not giving up on it when it was really looking like it was a crap show during camp.
So on the press conference today, the question obviously was brought up: who is Shador, your quarterback one? And he goes into saying well, we don't know yet type of answer. But what you're telling me is everything about his offense is kind of complicated for a young guy to kind of learn right away, with the cadence and coming up and learning the offense and switching things up. So would he be more apt to want to bring in a veteran quarterback that he's more comfortable with to start off, and then maybe go into Sanders?
I really have no idea what the Browns are going to try and do. I don't think it should be Monken's decision, but you can tell me, how is the silo system work in Cleveland? It's not a strong head coach system, right? Is it a strong GM system or a side-by-side?
Well, it just changed. It used to be Kevin and him. Yeah, it used to be Kevin and him side by side, but the last year and a half, now the story's coming out the last 2 years, it's been more Kevin's been told what to do and he had to listen.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if they're going to keep that same where Barry's in charge.
Monken is not at an age or a level of experience to demand that he be a guy who can have all say in all personnel decisions.
Okay.
Harbaugh was, and I think it's the wrong move for the Giants to give him that kind of power. I would think it'd be the wrong move for the Browns to give that kind of power to Monken. I don't think they'll do it.
Okay, that's a good point.
It very often only goes to like the deserving, and it
Right.
just as often
Fails.
backfires. Yeah,
Yeah, we were big on like
over and over.
we had our fans are like, let's get John Harbaugh, and like we're like, guys, that's not going to happen here. Like he wants too much power. The way the structure is, it's like ownership
They're not
wants the
gonna do
most
it.
power. It's not going to happen here. He's not going to give it
very
up.
much the owner, the GM, and the coach get in a room and make decisions together, and basically it comes down to like a 3-party vote is what it feels like when they describe it. Like the ownership has a say, and the final say if they want to override things, which they have often, and the GM and the coach are also each kind of have a say. They did say specifically, our general manager in the early coaching search, we will make decisions on the quarterback, especially along with some other roster positions with the specific feedback of whoever the next head coach is. So I can't give you any feedback until I get it from him. But just a reminder for all Browns fans out there, Deshaun Watson also exists on this roster.
Yes, and
I think Todd Monken would have had a field day with him if he was
healthy.
Deshaun Watson 2020 Oh my God. that's
2020. You got it.
2020. Yeah,
2020.
that's it.
2020. You got it.
2020. Yeah, that's it.
2020.
Yeah.
Oh my God, help us.
It's been that long. Yeah.
Rather than 2026, where he hasn't actually been on the field for more than 6 games for 6 straight years, like
Yep.
if at all. So
Next question. When you watch Monken on film week to week, where do you see his fingerprints the most, whether it's personnel usage, formation variations, situational play calling, or in-game adjustments?
Okay, those are all good. He's been pretty good at in-game adjustments, I'd say. Coming out of halftime, the Ravens had some success, so that's be one thing I would point to. Um, much more variation and much more likely to spread as opposed to compress in terms of formation. So that was true under Roman. The Ravens had a couple really fall down efforts in terms of facing cover zero blitzes. And most notably in the 21 game at Miami, they lost 22-10 on a Thursday night. So too much detail maybe for Browns fans, but the Brian Flores and the Dolphins had 40 cover zero looks they presented Lamar Jackson with, and they just kept trying to compress on the offense. Well, it's a simple math game that the defense is always going to have one more guy to rush the quarterback than the Ravens have to block for the quarterback. So every additional player you bring in to tight to the formation is actually probably hurting you in that. So you got to figure out ways to scheme the ball out quickly, and they didn't get it figured out fast enough in that game, and they lost to a very bad Miami team. So there've been instances like that haven't looked good. The Monken offense, I don't think they have the same problems. Last year, notably in the win against Cincinnati, they figured out some of the crowding of the line of scrimmage that had been beating them earlier in the season. And Lamar's injury played a big role in that, by the way, that they weren't able to do the things, or a lot of the things that they had in the past, to beat crowding the line of scrimmage. But they did in the Cincinnati game, and that was a nice adjustment to that. It looked like they had a couple of plays ready to go. And that actually, as soon as they did that, the Bengals backed off, and the Ravens won that game 24-0. So they've certainly had adjustments that they made on the fly, whether it's game to game or within a game, that I think Monken will be good at. He's a good offensive coordinator. I mean, I would have been perfectly happy if he'd have come back, but the story is that John Harbaugh wanted to bring it back with Monken as well, and that is actually his loyalty to Monken may have cost him his job. If he'd said, yeah, we got to get rid of both Monken and Orr, let's replace on those side, rebuild, let's go, then Bisciotti might have kept him.
And then he took the job, and now I think they just hired their OC Nagy, right? Nagy just was hired in the Giants, I believe. I think I could be, I'm pretty sure that's it. Next question. Baltimore consistently punished defenses' tendencies under Monken. What specific example of on film do you see him hunting a matchup that matches the skill set translate into the head? And maybe can it translate to his head coaching role? Because he did say today he is calling plays.
So from a passing perspective, there actually is not that much. They do a lot of play action. They do. Zay Flowers became this outrageous between level 2 and level 3 zone beater. And if you have Zay Flowers, then that's great. If you don't, then you're beaten. Zay Flowers, the big thing he has is he doesn't sit in the chair when he decelerates like most receivers do. You hear that around draft time as something you talk about, receivers being able to sit in the chair. That's a good thing. They can come out of breaks, they can stop and go, but it also gives it away to the cornerback opposite you that you're slowing down. Sometimes that's good because you want to fake, whether it's stop and go or you want to have a comeback. If you want to go move laterally, it's terrible. You're giving away something to the cornerback that he can sit on. Flowers just sits, because he's so small, just sticks his foot in the ground and goes. He's like a Maserati or a Ferrari, turning the corner. And he had a great year of in between level 2 and level 3, making a lot of catches like that. So that was one area where I think that they were exceptionally good in figuring out that they didn't really have a matchup against him. In general, though, I mean, a lot of the Ravens offense, when Lamar is healthy, is driven by the fact that Lamar extends plays and will find a receiver anywhere on the field. That doesn't really have all that much to do with Monken as much as it has to do with Lamar's ability to continually move around. And that's why I think that he's being wed up with two guys who are Sean Payton disciples this year, who I think there's a really concern for the Ravens, whether or not he's going to be able to adapt to some of the quick passing and precision tendencies that go with a Payton offense.
Because it's more like a pocket type of passer as opposed to free roam.
Think about it as a much higher dependence on slants and timing passes and whatnot. Think of like Brady and Manning were late career. I just don't think that's who Lamar is. I think Lamar basically has made his career on these 3, 4, and 5 second throws, sometimes a 9 second throw, where he runs all over the field and then makes
Browns
a play.
fans know. Trust me, we know. We've seen many of them, especially him coming out of a bathroom.
Game, except for just, half the speed.
Yeah, unfortunately. What would the Browns fans need to be patient with early when it comes to Monken from a, offensive perspective? I know lack of talent is the main thing. I know Browns fans, they're excited right now because they just came off the press conference and they're like, we're going to run through a wall for Monken. He's the guy. And I know eventually by week 3 or 4, there's going to be doubt creeping in, right? So what can you leave us that I can clip this later and say, hey, here's some positive thoughts from Ken. Let's relax.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing I could do is I could say that Monken did a real good job going to Georgia and adapting to the players he had there, which was great. He had incredible talent there on the offensive line at tight end and whatnot. And then he came to Baltimore and he dealt with the talent that was here. And there was some, substandard wide receiver set was really where he started with in 23. They did get they did pick up Flowers in that year, but in 2024, he made Bateman into a good player. And that was, very nice to see. Bateman's had a kind of a dyadic career, but he had one big year under Monken. He got great tight end value out of the tight ends. I think if I had to say anything, I'd say he'll get value out of the tight ends you have, particularly given who Sanders is. I think a lot of the focus of the offense will be there. And Fannin looks like a real star. And, you'll probably draft somebody again this year who will meet a need for a second tight end, and that should be pretty good. Harrison Bryant's still around, or did he move on already?
No, I think last I saw he was at the Raiders, right?
I could be wrong. Or is it
Texans? One of them. Yeah.
Right.
He would be maybe a good guy to come back because I felt like he was not consistent, but he was reliable at times where for a second person, it was
they also swing him into like an H-back role, and without a fullback, it's a nice thing to have a tight end that can just line up as a fullback every so often.
Yeah.
We're kind of still wondering who's gonna take Patrick Ricard away from us.
I would do it.
Yeah, well, I don't know where he's going to end up. He's a nice endorsement deal with Pizza Bowlies here in Baltimore, which actually might be almost as significant as his base salary, because he's a guy who makes with the Ravens the vet minimum plus the veteran salary benefit, which is about $1.5 million of salary that doesn't count against the cap. So the Browns wouldn't have that advantage. So they'd have to go into the overpay situation. I'm sure he could pick up endorsements there, of course.
Yeah, I guess that we took nearly most of your staff. I suppose Todd is going to try to poach some of that talent off there, also during free agency. We'll see what happens. I'll leave you one last question. There's rumors of Daniel Stern. The assistant head coach. I mean, the analyst. He basically did the time managed right?
He's the director of football strategy. And he's been with the Ravens for 10 years, 2016 to 25. Had a big part in putting together the Ravens analytics department in the way it is. I have a lot of respect for the guy, and he has done I think a very good job. There have been 2 instances, one in his rookie season as a game management guru, where the Ravens lost a game to the Steelers they shouldn't have, and another one in his last year where the Ravens lost another game to the Steelers that they shouldn't have. Both of them were cases of where they could have knelt the football down close to the goal line, and that's been something that analytics is taking over the NFL. And if you're just waking up to that, by the way, good morning.
Our fans are still not caught up with that.
We still have fans that are.
I'm gonna clip that, and I'm gonna set it because we have a Saturday show. They hate analytics, and me and Chaz been telling them, dude, just get caught on, just get used to it.
We've also been telling them this has been around
for years
in sports since like the 30s, and it's been around in football since like the 80s or 90s. This is not new. This
is the great question that I love is, who is the father of sabermetrics in baseball? And I'll tell you, the big hint is it's his 3rd greatest achievement in his career.
I would not even.
And he's a 125 hitter who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
I should know it, and I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, the answer is Branch Rickey is really the Branch Rickey Of course, he broke the color barrier with by signing Jackie Robinson, and he's also the father of the minor league system as we know it today. Created the Cardinals, had 23 minor league teams at one point, but he is also the father of sabermetrics in a lot of ways and put that together. And he hit 125 as a player.
So he wasn't a good player, but he was very smart.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame as an executive. Yeah,
yeah. So I would think that's probably why they're very interested in Mr. Stern, because they're very high. We were rated first. I think Baltimore was second going into last year as far as analytics. And I think John it was huge. Harbaugh was huge in analytics over there in Baltimore.
Yeah, you guys had
bad rep in Cleveland, I think, because we do it and we're not successful. But when you see Baltimore does it, the Eagles do it. Like when you see some of the very heavy analytic teams like the Lions, Ravens, and the Eagles and what they're doing with it, you got to kind of convince fans, like, take a step back. Just because we're not good doesn't mean that the analytics aren't a useful tool. But since going over his title, like we just lost our chief strategy officer, Paul DePodesta, like former, famous baseball, Moneyball. Yeah. Former baseball analytics guy, went back to baseball, and fans were not very excited about him. I would almost wonder if they have a guy who does it, though, who has been with a organization in football for most of his career or all doing it, if fans would be more warm to that, because he got such a stigma of like, why is a baseball guy involved in our operation?
He's the way he would put it is he's had as his sweat equity in football. All right. So he's certainly learned here. He's still a fairly young guy. I think he's in his early 30s now. The Ravens hired a 26-year-old to basically take over that same role. A guy who's been with the Colts for the last 3 years, but he finished fourth in the Big Data Bowl, which is, by the way, that is an enormous achievement if you haven't heard of that. Yeah. But I guess despite the fact that analytics and football math, I really actually hate the term analytics. I'm an actuary personally, and I prefer to just call it football math or
I like that term better. We're gonna take that from you. I like football math.
But as much as coaches like say they're going for it more on fourth down, it's still the pace of movement towards it is glacial. The amount that they do it as a percentage of the total amount they should, if you look at just Ben Baldwin bought and other things, is very low. And they're just scraping the surface on some other things, like taking kneels on the football field. That should be normal operating procedure. We've had the math to do it for 3 decades. It's not hard to frickin' figure out that you need to do this, and yet they're missing the opportunity. And teams will have code words for this right now. They have code words in the huddle. If Geronimo comes into the huddle, that means you go down at the 1 yard line. You do not score, and or they'll have a no moss call, or they'll have whatever it is that they don't want you don't want a score done, and yet they don't really use it effectively. The mathematicians are up there in the booth. This is, by the way, it's a separate story, but I think your audience may have interest in this. They're very limited in terms of what they're allowed to have in the booth to make calculations with. They can't have a cell phone up there, for example. They're now allowed one computer. Okay, they have their Surface tablets, and you see them working on those blue things all the time. All those do is show them two images from each play, one before the snap and 1 second after the snap. That's all they have on those stupid things. That's why the looks at it and goes boom, 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 and he's done with it in about 5 seconds sometimes.
Wow.
But they don't really, I think, completely trust themselves to be able to do the math on the fly necessary. So they don't have like a Ben Baldwin bot. They don't have anything like that they could use. They just started in 2025 to have one computer allocated to each booth. And the NFL did this because they didn't want like a strategic arms race to start, in terms of everybody wants to have more and more computers and more, all of a sudden, there's a building right next to the stadium that's entirely a supercomputer trying to
a data center.
Yes, exactly. They didn't want that, obviously. And I guess I understand it, but now there's just a guy who sits around in that booth, and you'll sometimes see him with an NFL cap and shirt. He's watching over what devices the people have there and making sure that they don't use anything else.
Interesting, guys. You hear it? A game is changing, guys. Embrace it. We've embraced it here on the Tuesday show on the Bearded Browns. We embrace it during every game day. We talk about numbers, and people are like, "Why are you giving me PFF scores? Who cares about EPAs?" It's going that way. So stay tuned here. We'll give you more boring math facts if you want to, but it's the way the game is
We're
going.
not
I
gonna make
actually
you
enjoy it. I do.
We're not gonna make you do the math. We're just
We'll
gonna
do
tell
it for
you
you.
who scored the high. Yeah,
We'll
somebody
do it
does
for
it,
you.
and we'll tell you who
I
scored high.
never really was into it until I started the podcasting and I saw how the NFL was. This was 3 years ago. I saw how the NFL was trending that way, and I was like, man, I need. And then Chad got on and he started talking about PFF, and it
Pretty big at it.
caught the interest of my. And I mean, I'm dyslexic, so like sometimes it's even hard for me to read numbers. So it takes me harder to process things. So, and I still enjoy it. So either way, thank you so much, sir, for coming out. If you want to plug anything you need to plug right now, so people can give you a follow.
I'll be real quick about it. I'm at Film Study Ravens on Twitter. If you wouldn't mind following me there, you get good Ravens news in a timely fashion, and more importantly, the analysis that goes with these coaching changes. A lot of people are reporting on them, obviously. My podcast is Film Study Baltimore Ravens Talk. That's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. And the website is actually filmstudybaltimore.com. Why that might be important for Browns fans is if you want to go and see the offensive line scoring for Tyler Linderbaum, I do block by block offensive line scoring throughout the season. And if you end up winning the Tyler Linderbaum sweepstakes, that's a great place to find out exactly where every deduction occurred for the whole season.
I will also add, if you're a podcaster, specifically a Browns podcaster, and you want to know how the offense runs on your enemy side every week, you want to go to that website so you can prepare yourself for the matchup coming up whenever you play Baltimore. That's my little hack for you future podcasters out there. Thank you again, Ken, for coming in. I hope to have you again, maybe before game time this coming year. We come up and talk trash to each other.
Sounds
You'll
good,
probably
guys.
win either way.
Take it easy.
Baltimore always wins. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, that was let me see how to do this. I know how to do this, I promise. Maybe see, this
Stop
is why
recording?
we
Or just
Ready?
want to drop you out.
Yeah, no, you can. Oh my goodness, sorry.
It's just
Well, this
the
is
Ken
my show now.
Apparently, it's the only Ken show. What's going wrong here? So, for
Okay.
those of you that watch us regularly, Mike is not here, who typically produces, and he's a little bit more savvy because he's been doing this for a while at how to bring guests on and off. So we tried our best. And
Boom.
here's where
I figured it out. I don't need you
I
anymore,
explained
Mike.
yeah, okay. I was just explaining, like, this is typically Mike's role, and we're like,
You know what
gotta
it is?
figure it out.
It's the it confused me the way the new setup is because I set it up that way. Either way, you know what? I learned something today. That was a very, very good
Yeah, I took a couple
insight.
notes off of it.
Holy jack.
We didn't get too deep in anything, which is fine because we've got plenty of time to like learn Monken. Pick a lot of it. To be honest, like the first thing I would say for you is see if you feel the same. You can only pull so much information about what Monken did in Baltimore, like as far as like running the offense and play calling, because they have Lamar Jackson, and that's just a different thing, right? So like I didn't want to get too deep into like what type of plays does he call, like what is their bread and butter, because like he brought up the point early that it's not relevant because Lamar Jackson just plays a totally different game than anybody Cleveland will have in the building, right? So I'm glad that they didn't go too deep into that. But one note I thought was worth taking was when he talked about Monken going from Georgia with one type of personnel in the college game into back into the pros, between Tampa and Baltimore. Like he had different people, different personnel. It was less about what is his offense and more about what was his offense for that situation. And I just think that based on some things we've heard from Andrew Berry and in this process, I think Andrew Berry couldn't have made it more clear with his comment that we don't have an offense right now. We have a bunch of young pieces,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a giant turnover, and we're going to bring in a bunch more pieces, and we don't know who they are. So they were specifically excited about an offensive play caller who seems to be able to shift things based on his personnel. So I think that was more impactful of a way to think about Monken's offense than to actually look back at Baltimore and say, not that the success isn't relevant because Lamar was better when Monken was there. So it's not just Lamar running around doing what he
Yeah.
wants. It's that Monken found a way to just maximize what they were doing with their personnel. And you get the feeling from Andrew Berry, they needed somebody to be able to do that because they don't know who they're going to get to draft at offensive line and wide receiver. And they don't know who they're going to be able to get in free agency. And so they basically have Judd off an injury, Harold Fannin, a couple of receivers that might stick around but probably aren't a core of the team, and then an unknown quarterback situation. So
Yeah, and it kind of makes me like encourage a little more with Munkin because from what he's saying, if he's developing along the way, whatever not to sit there and say Sanders is going to be like a Hall of Famer, right? But maybe he can find what's good for Sanders to do just to get him on the field to get comfortable again, and maybe be a starter, maybe be capable. Like, I don't think we need Sanders to, and I'll always consistently say this. I just think we need him to be a game manager. If you get him a game manager with that defense, and I think Munkin can see that, you
I
become a
don't think
game
it's
manager with that defense.
mentality, but maybe Monken has a way to like do what Kevin couldn't do, and we talked about it last year, kind of reel him in from trying to do more than he needs to, but still letting him be himself and do that when it's necessary. You know, Monken's I feel different about Monken now. I was going to say his offense was not that relevant because A, he's Lamar, and B, he's going to bring in an offensive coordinator, knowing that he's calling plays because he's bringing in a younger and not super experienced coordinator. Um, does make me think it's more relevant to how he likes to run an offense. So, but
Yeah, and
I think that's
his offense the last 3 years was first in total yards rushing, second in scrimmage yards. Points per game was third, rushing touchdowns was third, and receiving touchdowns was fifth. I mean, he scores. I mean,
mhm,
that's I think that's about 27 points per,
yeah.
close to 28 points per game, and we have not seen that in like consistently in 2.5 years. Oh,
I wish I
Flacco.
believed we were going to start seeing it, but
Yeah, you're
Lamar
far
Jackson,
off from that.
a multi-time
Yeah,
MVP, and Derrick Henry is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is what makes me nervous. Because as much as I like the way Judkins can run,
you
he's
need a line,
not Derrick Henry, and he's coming off an injury. And
and you
Lamar
need
is
an
just
offensive line.
true, and I think they'll get it. I think they'll get it. But like even if we had the exact same Ravens offensive line, Judkins coming off a major injury
Yeah,
and Sanders, Watson, Gabriel, for the time being, are
talent.
not Lamar, even if you combine them together. They're just not. So,
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean, I mean, it doesn't mean that he can't elevate us. We were an awful offense last year. I don't need him to make us top 3 in scoring, top 1
yeah.
in rushing, I need him to make us relevant as we rebuild this offensive roster.
We've always said at least average. If he can bump us from 31 to
If he can,
17,
and
that would,
especially with
yeah,
banged up Watson and with Shador, who I thought had a terrible rookie year, if he can get us even in the middle of the pack, I will be
yeah.
incredibly impressed
You brought
with
up Watson, and
that.
Watson's a very good. You're right. Like Watson in 2020 would have been a perfect
Yeah, if you had
Todd
somebody who was
quarterback.
just coaching Lamar and then he was gonna come in, like, if he had been the guy we hired, let's say we didn't have Kevin, let's say in 2022 when they brought in Watson, if they would have brought in Monken, people would have been thrilled that a guy that just had so much success with Lamar was gonna coach Watson. Instead, we tried to get Watson, shoved into the offensive game plan that Kevin likes. Watson pretended he was game for it. He definitely, we all agreed, bailed and changed his mind once he got paid. And was like,
Yeah,
"Nah, I don't wanna do that anymore." And I think we would have been I think in the law, we always think of the idea that we would have been better not picking up Watson. There's another argument that we would have been better picking up Watson if we just had a very different offensive philosophy and we were in
yeah,
a different place. So,
yeah. So Monken has press conference. He had a good talk. We all feel good about him now. We're gonna see. I guess we would say cautiously optimistic. We're gonna have hope, but we know. Well, I should say we. I shouldn't speak for all the Browns fans. Our offense is far off. Like, we need a lot of talent. We need to fill a lot of holes, but it would be interesting to see him. And Barry said it best. He's like, we wanted to bring somebody in because the influx of young talent. We want somebody to develop them. And Monken seems to have done that throughout his whole career. So what Barry said in the beginning of the process is we're going to find somebody where we're at now as an organization, specifically on offense. It seemed like Monken matches up to where they want their team to be right now, especially obviously they're going to go big offensively, either on the free agency or and in the draft. So we'll see what happens with that.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, with Monken here, that means somebody had to either get their feelings hurt or go to a different team. House is still in LA. Grant end up dipping, getting more money in Jacksonville, and that leaves Schwartz, who, according to reports, was very upset when he found out that he did not get the job and left the facilities in Berea, has not been back since.
And the jokes came rolling in immediately based on that report that they were telling candidates, if you come in here, you have to keep Schwartz as DC. And then you find out after the draft, Schwartz made it relatively known, it was not a quiet thing, that he wanted this job and that if he was passed over on it, he may not be game to stay. So, of course, immediately you get those typical like national media stories of like, oh, the Browns it up. They scared away candidates by trying to push Schwartz on them. They brought in candidates with the uh, under the like assumption that you would have to pair up with Schwartz, only to find out that they did hire somebody offensive, and Schwartz was like,
No, I'm good.
"See ya."
So I wonder if I read an article today that hinted or assumes that Schwartz, um, later in the game found out that he wasn't the front runner that he thought he would be, and his agent was putting out stories of how the defensive players would be upset if he was to leave.
Hmm.
And also too that he also brought that up multiple times in interview how the defensive players would be upset. Some defensive players would be upset if he was to leave because
I
of
think
the
I think some
relationship.
will. I
Yeah.
think that's probably. I mean, it's a PR move, but I think it's true. I think
Yeah.
seeing the Miles Garrett post as soon as they found out that Schwartz was not the guy highlights that they he's disappointed, and I think others will be too. A lot of people that were with the Browns for several years had a hugely elevated game when they got working with Schwartz, and I think even some players that came in, like um, Campbell,
You even say
name
Bush, Devin Bush, his
Devin
game.
Bush for
Yeah.
sure. Who's the lineman that we lost late season that I should definitely not
We
be
traded,
forgetting?
right?
Malik
Collins, yeah.
Collins. So, like, Malik Collins, but is 30. There's no reason he should have had one of the best, if not the best season of his career, and he did. Uh, Miles set a sack record. He's been a stud the whole time, but he was great under this style, and use Devin Bush is a perfect example. He was literally a first round bust in 2 other locations. You don't see often where it's like, "Oh, there's a defensive guy that played for the Steelers, and then he came to the Browns and excelled." Like,
Mm.
that is credit to Jim Schwartz. The problem is, we've said before, I think the best thing Jim Schwartz did, and maybe Ken just described this a little bit about Todd on offense, is just let the players do what they do well and don't overcomplicate it. I think Todd Monken said something almost to that degree in his press conference. Is like, let the players do well. Your job is to just create a system that lets them excel at what they do best. And I think that's not an irreplaceable skill, but also have the reality that they could easily hire somebody in the position that has them take a step back first, because Jim Schwartz could do this probably in his sleep. He's done it for a long time,
Yeah.
and he's done it here for a couple of years. So I think assuming the next guy will be better is foolish. Assuming that nobody can do what he did is equally foolish.
Yeah. I think it's a balance. I think you appreciate Jim Schwartz for what he's done without ignoring the fact that he
Yeah.
did some great things here. But to think somebody's going to come in and just just say me and you go and just an average Joe is just going to go in and pick up. No, I
Yeah.
think they're going to have to find. Obviously, they're going to vet. They're going to do their homework because they. Can you imagine if they get this part wrong? Like if the defense goes from top 5 to even middle of the pack.
And it could happen. I mean, it's
Yeah, it
a
can.
realistic possibility that we should be ready for
Yeah,
because whoever they
JP.
hire could be a first-time DC, and Todd Monken was on the other side of the ball. Like, I think a lot of people were really hoping that one of these other head coaching candidates that didn't get the job would step in
Keep
and
'em.
like more. A lot of people are like Raheem Morris would be incredible because they trust what he can do,
Yeah,
but you're probably not going to get that now. So you're looking at
yeah. Raheem
who
Morris is
through
in
these
the
interviews,
system.
whether it's the staff here,
It's
and it did
yeah,
sound like he doesn't want to change the scheme,
yeah. He said for
so
sure. He's
he's
like, we're not
probably not
changing
going
the
to
scheme.
go.
Yep.
Right. So he's not gonna go to another scheme, which is impactful to me. What I got tired of was for years was us firing head coaches. They would go from a 4-3 to a 3-4, fire the defensive coordinator, go back to a 4-3. In each of those years, they would cut
Yep.
personnel who were talented because they no longer fit the scheme. And now you've got to replace guys
Yep.
who you were developing because they do something a little bit different. Like our linebackers, our defensive line, our edge rushers is where it's really impactful if they change the scheme.
Yeah.
Also, we just traded away Newsome for Campbell because we were doing a ton of man and we needed a corners who can do more man coverage better. And like if you all of a sudden went into some zone heavy scheme, like then
That would
then you're doing it
that
again.
would
So
void that trade. Yeah. That
I'm
they
I'm
were like,
I'm appreciative that he recognizes what Jim Schwartz did and that the goal is if it's not going to be Jim Schwartz, which to me it sounds like it's not going to be, they need to find someone to step in and run this defense
yeah,
similarly.
he said, this is from Monk, and he said, first of all, my anticipation is we're not going to change the system. It's very difficult to go against. So he's acknowledging the greatness of the
Yeah.
system and the players in the system right there. He said the players are built for the system they're in. That means Barry drafted correctly according to the system. They cannot they can rest assured that we're going to keep the same system. And while he was saying this, I don't know if you caught this, but as he was talking, he was carefully choosing his words because he would pause. He said, they can rest assured. A
Yeah.
big reason I took this job was because of the defensive players. I did not take this job because of Jim Schwartz. I have a lot of respect for him. But when I was preparing for the Cleveland Browns, I was preparing for Miles Garrett to chip Miles Garrett, not to chip Jim Schwartz. So
I think
eh, yeah,
that
that
says
seems
a
like a
lot.
dig. That seems like a dig at
Yeah.
Jim, like basically saying like it's not Jim, it's not Jim's presence that makes the defense great. It's the players. It's the
Yeah.
scheme Jim Shorts put together, but his presence
Right.
outside of the offside of the sidelines is not going to change the fact these players are going to play the way they do.
Yeah, and I don't think he has any lack of appreciation for how good of a defensive coordinator Schwartz is. I think he knows Schwartz is very unlikely to come back. I'm sure they've talked, and I'm sure if he thought he was coming back,
You'll be
he would
very nice.
maybe approach it different. But I think it was more like a basically a reality check and a call out to the Browns fans of
Get ready.
it has to be very relevant to everybody in the building, uh, their feelings about Schwartz, and he has to be very aware of how the fans feel about him. I think this was almost a talk up the personnel, which is fair because we both already agreed shows ago, like a month ago, the personnel is more important on our defense than the coach. Even though the coaching is important, it's more we know the pieces are there. So now it's about can you get a good defense out of them versus like can you scheme around this lack of talent and like can you find tricks and coverage disguises? I think it comes down to he's setting the fan base up for softening the blow of Jim being gone by acknowledging and trying to shift the focus to, but your players are still here, so we're gonna still make it work. That's
Yeah.
what that really felt like to me is is him talking up the players to minimize the loss that we're about to have at the DC position.
Yeah. So I mean, three names that come to mind: Tarver, Jacques, and Bata. They're the three guys that obviously has been with Jim the longest. I think Jim actually brought them in. Look for those three. I've heard a lot of I think his last name is Bata. He already interviewed for the Philadelphia DC
Mhm.
and the Dallas Cowboys DC. So he has interviews already been done. Now that could be because they needed a minority to do it, yes, but he still got the experience of being interviewed. So maybe if he's interviewed now, he's more comfortable. I think the front runner right now, a lot of fans are saying Tarver, but we'll see what happens with that. Tarver, he was a DC at one point. I forgot where he didn't do Raiders. He was bottom. Not to sit there and say he can't learn and change
Yeah, the
things, but
Raiders are so bad
yeah,
recently that it's like it's tough to tell. Like, do
yeah.
they actually have the personnel? Jim Schwartz could go straight to the Raiders
Philly.
this year, and he's not going to be very good because they don't have
Yeah.
players to
Yeah,
run
they're
it.
just
We've
saying,
said before,
"Crosby
his
go,
scheme is
Crosby go."
very his scheme is very win your assignment based. It's not like we're going to trick guys. We're gonna throw everybody off. We're going to get them by like blitzing. It's going to be we're going to go at them one on one and we're going to win. And that's how he kind of set that up. So
Yeah, so, not only that, Barry said a couple things I wanna point out real quick. Let me scroll up, and then we're gonna get into the offensive. What's rumored to be his team around Monken. Barry, provides context to the decision, highlighting the team's youth, especially on defense. By the way, they're gonna be top 8 on young, the age as far as top 6. Age young as far as being young on I didn't realize that.
keep this in mind because I did, but I think I didn't know the actual number. I knew they were on the younger side, or I knew they'd be on the younger side. I had this conversation with somebody earlier in the season where like, well, the Browns aren't that young. And I'm like, that's because Joe Flacco, who will be gone next year, is
Yeah,
40. Joel Batonio is 33. Uh uh Conklin was 31. And um Teller was 30. I'm like, those are and David Njoku is like, I think 30. I'm like, when you take all those contracts that are ending this year and you assume whoever they bring in will not be
be
30 to
younger. Yeah.
40, then all of a sudden, and Shelby Harris is like 34. He's probably gone. So
I
what you
would love to
basically did
keep
was
Shelby Harris.
he's
Yeah,
so great.
he's
I
so
love him.
good.
I think he's a
Yeah,
great in the locker room,
I
and I
agree.
also think he can still play. He can still show up.
Yeah.
But the reality was most of the contracts that are ending are of people that are 30, 34, 40. Those are extremes. They're not going to replace them with 40-year-olds, which means they're immediately going to be
Be a lot younger.
incredibly younger next year. You know,
Yeah.
when your room is a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old, and a 40-year-old, yeah, the age of your room seems old. When that 40-year-old leaves and you're stuck with 30, 24, and 23 again, that's so different. So
Yeah. Um,
I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the
K
5 youngest.
yeah, KP, Young on Facebook said, "Throw a bag of money at Jim Schwartz and give him complete control of the defense."
I
Well,
think he
he
already
already
had
had
that.
complete control. Yeah, he already
Yeah,
had
he
complete control.
really
He did
already
what he
had that
wanted.
with
Yeah. That now the
and
bag of
it
money, I don't know. I mean
it
I
would be
mean,
about
if you
money. I don't
yeah,
see them giving him more money just to
money,
do the job he's
the year
contracted to do
yeah,
now.
he's under for 2 years. He's already under contract. I mean,
Yeah, I
they're not
don't
gonna
think they're
tell
gonna
him
be
no
like
more.
they could. I mean, if they saw him as this, like, irreplaceable
Yeah.
commodity, they would. But I also believe if they saw him as that, he'd probably be the head coach right now. I
Yep,
just
and also too, I mean, they got control of his contract. And would you want Jim Schwartz to come back just because of money after obviously there's tension there? I mean,
that
if
is
he
actually a
disagrees, yeah, and they're you know
terrific
how they
point.
are, they're very, hey, it's Jimmy, it's GM, it's head coach, and then it's the
Well,
coordinators.
also, now you've got a little bit of a power struggle because you're
Yeah,
bringing him back for a lot of money. He may create
probably makes
tension
more
because
money
maybe
than
his
Monken
defense wants to be listening to him, the
as
message from
opposed to
him, over the message of the head
and
coach, and
they believe in
that's
one
tough.
message. They don't believe once you start messing around, they're gonna was that Haley? Well, him and
People yes.
Hugh Jackson were fighting back and
Yep.
forth. They'll fire you, dude.
When people started trusting what Todd Haley was saying rather than the head coach. And I'll be honest, I thought Todd Haley was
Yeah, me too.
more correct in all those conversations that were on Hard Knocks. I see those conversations and I go, that's right, that's wrong. But you can't have your coordinators having a message that kind of trumps the coach. That's how everyone gets fired. And by the way, everybody got fired that year. When the OC,
Yep.
DC, and head coach aren't all like they can argue, they can get mad at each other. There's very well publicized story from this year of Todd Monken and Harbaugh getting into it, but it doesn't matter overall because their level of respect and the fact that like there was an obvious voice that led that room at the time to the point where Harbaugh is still reportedly was asking Todd Monken to turn this job down and
Yeah.
come be the OC. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with some butting heads, but you can't have like an internal power struggle that will tear your team apart.
Yeah, I think you can butt heads respectfully and still love each other, as opposed to I want power, so I'm gonna butt
And
heads
still
with you.
work through it.
Yeah, still
You know,
work
you
through it.
disagree on something, but then you work through it and you're like,
And
okay,
that's
we're
what
good.
worries me about bringing Jim Schwartz back. It's like if you bring him back, they're gonna be, hey, I get probably if they throw a bag of money, you're getting paid more than Monken is because he's probably getting paid high dollar anyway. Says I mean, he's just a good
Yeah.
DC. So we'll
No, I'm
see.
glad you brought that up. That's a good point. I agree. It's not that it's not the same thing, but it's not that far off of giving the bag to Watson and all of a sudden his motivation to do everything the best is different.
Different.
And also
Yep.
you just don't want somebody salty in the building. Don't get me wrong, I will take him back immediately if it's under the right circumstances. I just have a hard time believing at this juncture that it is. I think they're looking into his assistants. They're looking around the NFL to see if there's somebody else who is qualified, and
Yeah,
they're going to
I
probably have
feel
a
they're
first
gonna
time
go
DC.
in. They're gonna go in internal. I think it's inside.
I
There's
think
gonna
they're
be one
hoping
of those
to.
3 games. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think it's
agree. I would think
by
they're
the
hoping
way
to.
he was saying, I think he was confident in saying the defense is gonna be all right, whether Jim Short.
Yeah. You froze on me, so I'm gonna keep going for a minute. But I agree. I think that's why he was playing that. And then we brought up the point earlier that the rest of the defensive staff was not only retained but present. So if that's the case, then it's hard to believe that they're not heavily involved in this potential new DC search. So while we're waiting for Angel to get on, off, and back again, I'm going to quickly go through just a quick update on some of the teams' hires so far on the offensive side, since we've talked a lot of the defensive side, and then run through a couple of these questions. So we got a different group in a lot of the chat today. Um, I just saw Rich. It's off topic for the Browns show, but it's hard not to comment that Harden's coming to the Cavs. Rich, I see you're excited. I am so nervous. I've always struggled with trying to land on how good Harden is as an individual player versus as a piece of a team, and I get why they did it. Garland is just not. He's just not been available to them when they need him, and he hasn't developed into the guy they hoped. But that's a kind of a crazy one. Thinking of Harden ever being in a Cavs uniform is just mind blowing to me. Um, there's also this talk of like Greek Freak, LeBron coming here again. It's all kind of nuts. So we'll see how it works out. You got to be excited though because they're not playing up to snuff, and at least it's a shakeup that could lead them where they're hoping to go. Um, to answer the question about play calling, who called plays in Baltimore? It was Todd Monken calling the plays in Baltimore. Harbaugh didn't call offensive plays there, so so expect him to maintain that gig. Harry Clark is asking if Kyler Murray would be a good choice. I think play style. I could see how you can relate that um, to Lamar and what Monken was able to do with Lamar. I have a hard time believing the Browns would ever go that direction with somebody like Watson still under contract. I don't know if he'll continue to play here, but I know it's very difficult to cut him. I almost think they would be just as tempted to try to get one last squeeze out of Watson before they would go give up anything to bring in Kyler Murray, who's also consistently injured, has some issues with being able to play within any kind of system. We got some Go Brownses. Yeah. Well, that looks about it for the major comments. I'm going to jump on real quick to just the teams hired so far, just to reiterate. Guys so far brought in are Mike Bajakarian is the quarterback's coach. I made the joke earlier on X that he looks just like football Adam Silver. So we were talking a little bit of basketball. If you haven't seen him, look up the new Browns quarterback coach. He kind of spit an image, at least in the pictures I saw, of Adam Silver. They brought in Travis Switzer, who was the run game coordinator. Now they brought in George Warhop, who's an offensive line coach. From what I've heard of him, he is a little bit more of a scheme coach, more so than a technician coach, which is a little bit more like Coach Callahan. So I think Browns fans will be on board with that. Danny Breyer was brought in. He's the pass game coordinator. Ian Colsty is an offensive analyst, and we talked a little bit about Daniel Stern, the associate head coach, who's apparently still negotiating a little bit of a contract. Otherwise, we've got some interesting stuff coming up in the future shows here. I'm not sure Angel's coming back. We might have lost him forever, but this was basically our Todd Monken introduction. We've talked about most we need to talk about. Some things we're going to get into a little bit over the course of the next several weeks. We will get to free agency, but we're probably going to stop over the next week or two and talk a little bit more about the All-Star Bowls, whatever you call them, the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl. All those college All-Star games are done. There is a lot of adjustments that are made after those in draft stock, and a lot of confirmations made by some of these draft guys, Kuiper, McShay. We usually get Dane Brugler's the beast. We look at our lads. I don't think these are game-changing games for these prospects, but it does take guys with questions about how they would, especially from like small schools, or maybe there's so much talent on a team that it's hard to differentiate. Is it playing for Georgia, or is it your own skill level? Is it that you played with the Buckeyes and guys are just dominating the competition, or is it an individual's ability? So we will get some of those questions answered, and we'll go into a little bit of analysis based on some of the stuff we're reading, hearing, being told regarding the prospects coming out of the Senior Bowl, and then we'll lock some of that down, and then we'll take a break for free agency. And so that's going to be some of our upcoming stuff. Hope you guys join us for the ride. We didn't get a lot of chance because of the lack of segments today to talk about our sponsors. Cleveland Ketchup is a big one to me. If you guys are still having Heinz ketchup, shame on you. Get that Pittsburgh stuff out of the fridge. Get that tomato sugar goop out of there. Go find yourself a better quality brand, a local brand. Cleveland Ketchups, Cleveland Mustards, incredible. We're still sponsored by Lego Heads, the local shop to get yourself fresh and cut, and get that beard faded up and that hair chopped. And Mike White, Allstate Insurance, will also be continuing with us in the show, and Bearded Bastards barbecue sauce. Take a look, try to find some of those at your local stores, grab them online, sign up for Lego Heads, get in the habit of liking and subscribing some of our stuff, share with friends. We are a quickly growing platform, and we really appreciate you guys coming along for the ride, and we will catch you next week. As always, go Browns.